Hey folks, Ron here. It's going to be a little bit loud with the traffic. I wish I could show you more of this location, but I can't. I'm going to be showing you just the sign just outside the Chateau Marmont, the famous, infamous Hollywood, just east of the Sunset Strip hotel where John Belushi died and where countless rock stars and others have stayed. But it's probably most infamous for John Belushi dying there. John Belushi, in his last couple of years, used to stay at the Chateau every time he was in Los Angeles. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I could speak for a good hour on this subject, but you don't want to look at me and hear me for an hour, or probably even 10 minutes. But I'll tell you what I know, because this will be mostly discussion. Maybe I'll try to go around back, too. There's our sign. There's our sign. There's our sign at the Chateau. The Chateau Marmont is one of those hotels where, believe me, if you could just walk in the lobby and take photos, I would. But you can't. I've eaten here once, and even to get into the restaurant, everyone's name in the reservation has to be on the list before they admit you to this. Look at these gates. It's very gargoyle-ish. Before they admit you to the lobby and then through part of the lobby to the restaurant. They really don't want peering eyes, although we know it's tourists. Put my glasses back on for a second. I got somebody coming at me. And what I will say also is, yeah, this is about 2 miles from where I usually post west that way, looking towards the Sunset Strip. Definitely shadier and sketchier here. Definitely sketchier. So these are all just the walls of this chateau. An old, literally a chateau that was made into a hotel. We're looking at the Sunset Strip. See how far up we can go. Place. Okay, well, here's a sign. Well, like I said, you can't, unfortunately, can't just walk in. I'm surprised there's not security here. Road. There's a road that goes behind. Oh, it's Marmont Lane. I think we're going to walk behind. Oh, that's not a bad view. It's the best we're going to get. Let's see what we got up here. So John Belushi used to stay here in his last visits to Los Angeles, particularly in the late 1981 and early 1982, and he died in March of 1982. It just has a creepy vibe to it. It just has a creepy aura to it. Creepy. And it's dark and it's quiet. But at least in up until the 70s and 80s, look how dark it is here. It was very, oh my God. It was very popular with celebrities. Now not, I don't know about now. I went once around Christmas time a couple of years ago, and my one celebrity sighting was Richard Lewis was standing at the bar. Comedian Richard Lewis. Let's see if this is Montiel Road. Look at those houses on the hill behind. Wow, look at this. It's possible to get parking during the day. So at 9 o'clock it was just possible. Well, I got the last parking meter spot. Let's put it that way. Let's come over here. I know it's dark. And every night video, I justify why I do night videos, and I'm not going to do it anymore because same words over and over. Oh, look at that. It does kind of look like a spooky castle, doesn't it? There's somebody actually coming up the road. Look at the fire escape. Early 20th century. Okay, the reason I'm coming up this way is because this street, which is a one-way street, wow, more cars coming by. This street's a one-way. I'm always expecting security to come, and if they do, so be it. This street is a one-way, and the reason, like I say, I know it's one-way is because Kathy Smith, who spent the night with John Belushi the night before he died, borrowed his car, was wearing some sweatpants and clothes that he gave her to wear, because she'd been wearing the same clothes for a while, because that's what, as a heroin addict and alcoholic and pretty destitute, that's what she did. So he lent her some clothes, sweatpants, a jacket. She ordered room service, had breakfast, checked on John. She said she checked on him when she left the suite, the bungalow, and then she went out to do what she did every day, which was placing bets at a little bar on Santa Monica Boulevard on horse races and getting cheap drinks at 8, 9 in the morning, and getting her first fix and working on getting her heroin for that day. So my point is, when she came back, when she returned to return John's car and see him, she was going the wrong way on Montiel. She was actually coming from this direction. The cops were already here because Belushi's body had been discovered, and they said, "Hey lady, don't you know you're going on a one-way?" "Oh, I didn't know. What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm just delivering John's car. I'm bringing his car back." Here's a camera right here looking at me. She said, "I'm just bringing back John's car." "John who?" "John Belushi." "Ma'am, would you step over here, please?" That's how they found out about Kathy Smith. This is incredibly dark back here. The reason we're back here is because John Belushi's Bungalow 3 had an entrance back here, which has since been covered up. Yeah, can't see much. Can't see much. I'd like to be the people living right here, huh? But there is great film, and you can see it on YouTube, footage of the police and the coroner and everybody here in this very alleyway. Let's see if these lights go on as I walk by. All right. No point going past Monty. Look at that. Creepy, huh? So let me talk a little bit about John Belushi. I'll keep showing you what we can see here of the Chateau. Another car coming. Let's hope he doesn't hit me. So my source, I have a lot of different sources, but a great source for me, I know Dan Aykroyd and Judy Jacqueline, John Belushi's late wife, is not happy about this particular source because they think they portrayed John in a really negative light. I think it was a realistic light from the hundreds of interviews they conducted. Was Bob Woodward's book Wired. Forget the horrible movie Wired, 1984. I went to see it in the theaters and should have walked out. It was horrible. But the book Wired, written by Bob Woodward of Woodward and Bernstein, ex-Washington Post reporters who kind of cracked the Watergate story. Bob Woodward, being from Wheaton, Illinois, same place as Belushi, he got interested in the case and he wrote a book. And he covers Belushi's entire life in these hundreds of pages. Let's look up Montiel there for a minute. Hollywood Hills, baby. But the most interesting to me are, I'd say, the last 50 pages. And in the last 50 pages, or maybe it's more, I don't know, I had a paperback copy. I probably read it 100 times, probably torn to shreds now. But in that copy, in that last 50 or 75 pages, whatever, Woodward details the last couple of weeks, day by day of Belushi's life. He must have done painstaking interviews for 2 years because he's got it down, where he was going, what he was doing, who he was seeing, based on interviews. Like I say, it's a kind of hotel you can't just walk into the lobby, and you certainly can't walk into the restaurant unless your name is on the reservation list, which I did. Was I all that impressed? I'm not the kind of guy who remembers food or really cares about food, but I wanted to go. A friend of mine invited me and my ex, and there was about 6, 7 of us there, and it's kind of a holiday meal, and I wanted to go because it's a Hollywood place. Now, fortunately, I didn't know as much about Belushi as I did then, or I would have wandered the halls a little more. So I'll talk for a few minutes based on the Woodward book. If you just want to see the images, you going to stop now. Now I'm just going to talk. If you want to hear what happened to John Belushi, the sad, fast life of John Belushi, I'll tell you my thoughts, and you can listen. You can stay with me a few more minutes. So one thing about John Belushi is that I find very interesting is that his brother, now Jim Belushi, the actor, thinks that John Belushi may have had CTE, what is it, concussive trauma? I don't know, not concussive, that's not a word. But brain trauma, brain damage basically, which made John self-medicate with drugs as much as he did and cause his somewhat erratic and unstable at times behavior. I think it's an interesting theory. He claims that because John Belushi did play football in high school, and maybe he was slammed in the head too many times. You football players can comment to me on what you think of that, but I would imagine it takes its toll. And John did appear to be getting progressively worse. So let's talk about what we know. John Belushi obviously was started out in the Chicago area in Second City TV. Not TV, but the Second City Improv Group. Bernie Salins was leading it in Chicago. So here's some of the drivers here. And from there, he was on Broadway or off Broadway. He did a show called Lemmings with Betty Buckley. I know that. That was a National Lampoon show. And then he's watching me closely. I should move on. And from there, obviously John got the famous gig at Saturday Night Live, and then films. And we can't go into the whole thing. Suffice it to say, John was a very popular member of Saturday Night Live from '75 to its first season, its opening cast, to 1979, I believe, or 1980 when he quit the show, along with his partner and good friend, probably best friend, Danny Aykroyd. And Dan Aykroyd and John went in to do films together. Dan was also a writer, still is. And John was doing films with and without Dan, mostly with Dan. And I think that within a couple of years, John had already, I think he was kind of regretting the fact that he quit Saturday Night Live. Could be wrong, but click on to the song going, traffic from Sunset Boulevard. But as Belushi's career kind of just started to go downhill with the films, I think he might have regretted. And I think he also missed the ensemble atmosphere of Saturday Night Live. So John Belushi was doing films. In 1978, he was part of an ensemble film called Animal House, which is another National Lampoon based in, and it was a huge hit. Belushi was the huge over-the-top comic relief character Bluto, and it was great, but it was also terrible because he said that people always wanted to replicate Bluto, and they wouldn't consider him and take him seriously. So afterwards, he did a role in a film. It did 1941 with Steven Spielberg directed. Spielberg's really first and only flop, and it was his third film. Two huge successes, Jaws and Close Encounters, then 1941. And then he had kind of a comeback, Belushi did, in The Blues Brothers. He had number one movie and number one hit album in the same week. Pretty amazing, actually, when you think of it. So Belushi was riding high until about 1981, and then in 1981 he tried to step out of the box and did a film called Continental Divide, which is directed. The director of Continental Divide, actually, is the late husband, well, ex-husband and late husband of a woman I went to high school with and did two plays with, a writer named Dana Stevens, who went on to become the writer of a film called A League of Their Own and Blink. Was it A League of Their Own or For the Love of the Game? One of them, but I know she wrote Blink. Anyway, hi Dana, if you happen to ever watch this. And like I said, I did two plays with her in high school, and she went on to bigger and better things. We both did, in different ways. Anyway, Michael Apted was the director, late director, English director, directed Continental Divide. And Belushi lost weight. He wanted to be taken seriously. He wanted to be kind of a Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn romance kind of thing. And, you know, I think his depression, which had been going for years, was growing at that point and got a lot worse. I think that was the cliff that he started to dive off emotionally, because the critics didn't accept him and the film didn't do all that well. And I think it was a good film. It was written by Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then directed The Big Chill, and a lot of other things. Anyway, so they thought they had a sure hit on their hands, and they didn't. So Belushi, then married to his wife, who he had known, do you know Judy from high school or college? I'll have to research that, but he knew her for a hell of a long time. Judy Jacqueline, who became Judy Jacqueline Belushi. Okay, I want to see what's going on here, so I better turn on the glasses. Let's walk this way a little bit. And you never know who's homeless or who's kind of out of it around here, so I'm trying to stay on my own a little bit. A little loud too, huh? Let's go, it's a little more quiet, hopefully. So, starting about a year before he died, I believe John's depression, and I believe he had this for years, was getting worse and worse. And he would, his primary residence was with Judy in New York, but John was causing problems. He had a very serious, by then, cocaine addiction, and he was spending tons of money on cocaine. Judy, by the end, was thinking of committing him, supposedly, into an asylum because he was out of control. Dan Aykroyd was always trying to help him. They hired a professional sort of bodyguard named Smokey Wendell to help him out, to watch over him. They'd go with him everywhere he went and try to stop the dealers from giving him drugs. The problem was that by very late 1981, well, then the death knell was the movie Neighbors. John was kind of talked into the movie, doing the movie Neighbors with with Danny Aykroyd, his partner, and John had a terrible time on the Neighbors set. In fact, he wanted to literally fight the director, hated the director. The director was John Avildsen, who directed Rocky, but he was so angry at him, he wanted Aykroyd to direct the picture. He wanted the studio to take the picture away from Avildsen. He wanted to direct it, anybody but Avildsen. And when the movie didn't do well, it was like, you're destroying my career, and I told you this was going to happen. So John came up with a plan. Well, he was offered a film by another guy that I met and spoke to, a very nice guy, who used to be a writer, a director for Soap, the movie Soap, and all the Mary Tyler Moore's, named Jay Sandridge. Jay Sandridge was going to direct a picture called Sweet. Wow. I could pause, but I'm blanking out on the name. It was sort of a wine caper, like a romance caper involving wine, and there's a lot of homeless around here, dubious looking folks, so I gotta be careful. Wine caper with sweet deception about wine and about romance, and they thought it would be good for John. Well, John immediately started rewriting the film with his friend, the guy who played Guido Sarducci on Saturday Night Live. They're rewriting the film. Well, there's a liquor store parking lot. Maybe I shouldn't hang out here. They started rewriting Sweet Deception, and then by the end, okay, this probably isn't a good spot either. I'm going to pause for a minute. Let's see if it's a little safer over here. So they started rewriting Sweet Deception, and it became a movie. The screenplay was pretty bad, what they were writing, because I've read parts of it, and not funny. It wasn't really a comedy anymore. And John started, by this point, very beginnings of 1982, I think John was his lowest ebb, and he started infusing parts of his own life, his real life, into the Sweet Deception, which he now called noble rot. It's a phrase he heard about wine, and I don't know exactly what it means, but something about when the vineyard is dying and it's the most noble rot. Anyway, so now the film is called Noble Rot. He's writing it, co-writing it, and it's not funny. and the suits at Paramount are not happy, but he has he's going to have a pay-or-play deal soon enough. So they're writing it. They're staying at John is staying here at the Chateau Marmont. He's not in bungalow 3. He's in another bungalow at that time, but there's a crying baby next door, and he's complaining about the crying baby, and the tenants with the crying baby are complaining about him blasting music, a lot of punk music actually, late into the, all night long. So it's a mutual hate. So he moves into bungalow 3, and John was getting very much into the punk scene. So in his depression and his outrage that the studio is rejecting his script now for Noble Rot, worse over worse, they suggest that John does a movie called The Joy of Sex, which actually was eventually made. Bad film. Based on the book The Joy of Sex. John, you're going to be so funny. Michael Eisner, then head of Paramount, and Jeff Katzenberg were trying to pitch it to him. They gave him a pay-or-play deal. We'll make the movie, or if you don't, you get paid. There was a pay-or-play thing involved, but he really wanted to make Noble Rot. So he's trying to get them sold on Noble Rot. They're writing, rewriting. By this time, John is having limousines driving around for 18 hours at a time. Beverly Hills Hotel actually changed their policy on limousine drivers. He wouldn't let the guy eat. He made the limo driver, come up here into an A-frame house, not too far from here, behind the Comedy Store, which was a drug den. People were freebasing there. He said, come on here, do some blow, come out, and you'll be able to stay up. The guy did. He says, I'll promise I'll give you a huge tip. John Belushi was out of control in the first couple of months of 1982. Judy was always scared, and so was Dan Aykroyd when John insisted on coming back to Los Angeles. In retrospect, they should have had him with a 24-hour bodyguard, but they didn't. John came back this last time to the Chateau Marmont. He wanted to pitch his movie, Noble Rot, directly to Eisenberg and to Katzenberg and the head guys at Paramount. He thought he was the only guy who could pitch it. I think the real reason that John wanted to come back here alone is he wanted to do heroin. He wanted to do drugs. Now, he comes back to Los Angeles. He says that he apparently has done heroin before and was intrigued. He started talking about doing speedballs, which he claimed he had never done, heroin and cocaine. Long story short, in the first couple days of March, John goes through some people he knows. He meets a girl and her boyfriend at the Rainbow. The girl says, and she's actually in the tape, which you could see on YouTube now. They interviewed her behind the bungalow in Montiel Road where we were. She says, I know this woman named Kathy. She's a dealer, a heroin dealer. Kathy Smith was a backup singer and ex-girlfriend for Gordon Lightfoot for a few years up in Canada. By now, she's sort of a degenerate junkie. Her roommate, who's like 15 years older than her, gives her money every day. I don't know what else their deal was. Gives her money every day to survive. She goes in, like I said, a little bar on Santa Monica Boulevard. She's drinking vodka and getting drunk, and she's also trying to score heroin, which she needs every day because she's a serious heroin addict who has no intention of quitting. The first couple of days of March, John is here alone, although he's meeting up with his druggy friends. Everybody in his circle is using. He teams up. He finds his old friend Nelson Lyon. And you can read about Nelson Lyon to this day. Nelson Lyon regrets those last few days. Belushi meets up with Robert De Niro, who's also staying at the Chateau Marmont. There's calls from De Niro saying that he and De Niro supposedly calls Robin Williams and says, Robin Williams, who's performing at the Comedy Store, hey, me and John are hanging out. We're looking for you. It's all through a haze of heroin. Not necessarily, not with Belushi, not with De Niro and Robin Williams, but the other people, these people not in show business, these dealers, these junkies, these users that John is hanging out with in the last few days. That's what ultimately causes his death. So he starts hanging out with Kathy Smith back and forth. Should I buy from you? Should I not buy from you? Make up your mind, Belushi. Should I buy? Should I not buy? He starts doing speedballs. He loves the feeling. He gives Nelson Lyon speedballs. He gives Leslie Marks speedballs, a girl he met at La Hot Tub Club a few nights earlier. He wants everybody in his small circle at that time, again, people not in the business, he wants them to start doing speedballs with him. And the script is kind of abandoned this time. He goes to meetings at Paramount. They hate the idea. They don't like his script. He's trying to sell them on it, Noble Rot. In the end, They're pushing him to do Joyous Sex. They think they're going to get Penny Marshall, who John knows, to direct. It'll be her directorial debut. He's unsure whether he wants to work with Penny Marshall, a woman director, her first script. In the meantime, John Belushi also comes up with another idea. He wants to do a screenplay, a movie based on heroin, a junkie named Johnny Chrome. I've read parts of the dialogue. It's terrible. I mean, in my opinion. Let's salute to old Johnny Chrome and what could have been. It's all about heroin. It's about Keith Richards. It's about Hollywood. It's about the Chateau Marmont. It's about West Hollywood. It's about shooting up. It's all the things. De Niro is mentioned in it. It's all the things that Belushi was into at that time. Punk rock and heroin mainly. And he was going to try to sell the studios on this. He also said he was going to shoot up. He was telling people he was going to shoot up for real during the film, including Bob De Niro. He told Robert De Niro he was going to shoot up when they were doing the film. One of the theories was, he was rehearsing and he shot up. In the end, on the last night, he's hanging out with Nelson Lyon and Kathy Smith. And he wants Kathy around because Kathy's supplying him heroin and cocaine. He wants Kathy around. In the end, he hangs out with Nelson Lyon and Kathy Smith, so the we are that Nelson Lyon has to go back to his wife. They're back at the Chateau. They're having a little party. Robin Williams stops by. He sees Kathy Smith, and Belushi wasn't back yet. He says, I don't want any part of this. He goes back to Topanga Canyon, tells his first wife, Valerie, I met this girl who's hanging out with John Belushi, and she's really scary. Anyway, the last night of their lives, they go to the Rainbow. That's John and Kathy Smith and Nelson Lyon. And I've done vlogs on the Rainbow Bar and Grill down the street here a few miles. And before they get back, after they leave the Rainbow, before they can get back to the Chateau, the three of them driving this rented Mercedes that Belushi has, he goes in and he gets sick in a gas station. Then he gets back to the Chateau and he gets sick again. And they say, are you okay? And he says he ate a bunch of greasy food at the Rainbow. But John was having coughing fits before he even left New York weeks earlier. I think John had walking pneumonia or something at the same time. It's just my uninformed opinion. I think he was sick with some respiratory thing besides all the heroin and how he wasn't taking care of himself. So on the last night they go, Nelson Lyon finally leaves. John and Kathy Smith take a shower. They're now alone in the Chateau. He keeps asking to be shot up with speedballs. He says he wants to go to sleep. He says he's cold. She turns the heat up. This is 2, 3 in the morning. She goes down to write some letters into the living room. She then, folks, for those of you who weren't around 82, this was long before email and text. So she's writing some letters to a friend she knew up in Canada. She orders room service for breakfast around 8 a.m. and then she wants to go in her regular routine, which is, like I said, the drinking at the bar and scoring for that day's heroin. She says she checks on John. She says he's snoring loudly. He's making kind of funny breathing noises, but definitely alive. She leaves. And, oh my gosh, I was going to say Smokey Wendell, but his other bodyguard goes and checks on him, comes back later with a typewriter that he had borrowed, knocks on the door. He comes in. He actually discovers in the afternoon Belushi's body and discovers him dead. The paramedics are called. They can't retrieve him. He's going crazy. The room is cold. John is kind of in a fetal position. Blood has already... So he's been dead, they say. They think about 3 hours from that time. Cause of death was determined to be an overdose. Although, again, I think that he had some kind of respiratory issue going on. I told you that Kathy Smith comes back to return John's car, not knowing he's dead, not knowing anything. Even seeing everybody around, she's driving the wrong direction on that Mont Hill Road. She's questioned and eventually let go. Years later, I think a couple of years later, after a National Enquirer sold her story, and Judy said, hey, she is admitting she gave him the drugs. The headline is, I killed John Belushi, and she actually was indicted at that time. But John Belushi's dead. John Belushi is dead. He overdoses, and um, Dan Aykroyd fulfills a promise at the burial site between the two of them, and he had heard a flight called, what was it, a song called the 10,000 Pound Bumblebee, and John said, look, if I die first, play this at my funeral, I'll do the same for you. And Dan Aykroyd was leading in on his motorcycle. And what's just interesting is that I read that Dan Aykroyd was a neighbor then, some 10 years later, he was a neighbor of, well, I know he was because I filmed his house. It's now owned by another celebrity, and they all say it's haunted because Cass Elliot owned it. Dan Aykroyd was at Anthony Perkins' funeral, his neighbor up on Seattle Drive in the Hollywood Hills 10 years later, and he helped direct traffic, you know. So I guess he wanted to do things at funerals, play music for the decedent and park cars 10 years later for his other friend, Tony Perkins. Anyway, I know this was a long one, but that's the story of what happened to John Belushi. I think that, I mean, John Belushi would not go to sleep. He would stay up, and nobody could keep up with him. And, you know, if you look at John in those last days, there's even pictures of him at the Chateau Marmont. His face is bigger than it ever was. Yeah, I think he was fatter and larger than he ever was. And I think at 33, with his receding hairline and his weight, I think John looked 53, and not a healthy 53. I don't know. You know, John needed serious rehab, but he certainly didn't want to. He wanted to be high all the time, and he wanted to stay up 15, 16, 18 hours a day. He would not go to sleep. And when he did try to go to sleep, even though he said, I need sleep, he wouldn't sleep well. So it was a story in self-destruction, and it was really tragic because he's a very talented guy. But I think if John would have gone to therapy, got some better film roles, get off drugs, lost some weight, the same things I say about Elvis, I think he could have survived, but it wasn't meant to be. Okay, folks, that was a long one. I'm a little out of breath. For those of you who stuck around to the very end, what is this now? 32 minutes, my longest vlog. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I'm Ron. For those of you who have subscribed already, thank you. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you do subscribe, leave like the channel, leave some comments if you like. Here's the liquor store I had to get away from. Here's Sunset Boulevard behind me. Matter of fact, I got to move the car soon anyway. Okay, folks, thanks for sticking with me, and I'll see you at the next location. Thank you. Bye-bye.